You've tuned in to the 49ers Rush podcast, and here is your host, John Chapman.
All right, here we go, Niners. This is what we've been waiting for. It is officially training camp time. The offseason has officially concluded, and we are done. Everybody reported today. Shanahan and Lynch had their press conference just moments ago as I'm recording this. But when you are listening to this, more than likely it will be the first day of practice. So great news. The only big things to come out of the press conference is we have 3 players that are put on the active PUP list. That is Trent Taylor, the big surprise. We knew that he had the back surgery and it might be a thing. But Jonathan Cooper, the guy who's competing for a starting right guard and spot, and Dakota Watson. So the big surprise there is Trent Taylor. And this means that, man, if our second-round pick, Dante Pettis, was signed, he would be getting all the snaps at the slot. But he is not there because the contract still hasn't been figured out. We saw this last year with Solomon Thomas. There's something about the Pac-12 and 49ers not getting deals done. But hopefully that gets done while I'm recording this, and he can get all those snaps in practice. That would be amazing for him. Anyway, so training camp has started. Today we're going to finish the last defensive group breakdown, the nose tackle / interior defensive tackle. And our biggest camp battle yet broken down. This one I have at a 51 to 49% split. I'm not quite sure who's going to go, but I will also go through the practice squad and help everybody understand who is eligible, who is not, and what that means for the player. Because a lot of people don't understand what the practice squad is. You can't just put everybody on there. But all that being said, man, let's just jump right into it. I am super excited. So there are 2 locks in this nose tackle group, and then there's a huge maybe. Now, the 2 locks are Earl Mitchell and DJ Jones. Those are the 2 guys that are going to be in no matter what. So let's start with Mitchell, who was basically our starting first and second down nose tackle last year. And DJ Jones shined some, but let's focus on Earl for now. So he's 6'3", 310 pounds. He's 30 years old, and he is an absolute lock. He has traveled kind of all over the league. He was drafted by the Texans in the 3rd round in 2010 out of Arizona. He's a fighting Wildcat. And then he moved over to Miami and bounced around a little bit. They cut him because they signed him to such a huge deal, and we went ahead and picked him up because we had a lot of cap room, and he stepped in and started for us immediately last year. Now, the strengths to his game, he is super strong lower half, very thick, heavy-bottomed guy. He's a big boy, and he moves very, very well for his size. Big motor guy and very quick on his feet. Now, the problem is he doesn't get a lot of pressure and he doesn't make a lot of tackles, but that's not really what his role is. He's a guy that is out there on obvious running, short yardage, goal line situations, first and second down only. I don't think he's ever out there on 3rd down unless it's like 3rd and 1 on the goal line, and we're in kind of a goal line package, like I said, but he's not a guy that gets tackles. His job is to allow Reuben Foster to be Reuben Foster. He is great at occupying more than one block, which is great because usually that nose tackle is lined up in the shade. And so what that means is you are on one side of the center to the strong side or to the weak side, depending on the blitzes and schemes and all the different things that are going on. But what his job is to do is to maintain that play side A gap and to try his hardest to get the guard and the center on him, because if you do that, we have 4 down linemen. There's 5 offensive linemen at all times, and if you can have one guy command 2, that means nobody's getting to your backers unless they leave the backside end alone and get down on a scoop block or whatever you want to call it, second level block to the linebackers. But again, if you go back just kind of through history, I hate talking, I don't even want to mention this man, but yeah, I'm not going to. I almost talked about one of the guys getting elected into the Hall of Fame that should be in prison, but that's okay. Let's move on from that. Vince Wilfork, kind of what he did and what made him so famous was you had to double team him on every single play. Now, Earl Mitchell is no Vince Wilfork. He doesn't have the speed or agility that he has, but he fits a certain role, and this is a valuable role for the 49ers because, again, the unsung hero of this defense is that up-front guy whose job, again, is not to get tackles or pressures. If he can, that's great. That's extra. But his job's to keep his linebackers running free. Now, his overall grade from Pro Football Focus is not great. He's a 56 for his career, which is basically not even starter worthy. But this is the problem with PFF. it's great for a lot of things, but it doesn't take the bigger picture into value there, because again, if he's getting double teamed and he basically doesn't give up any ground, he never makes the tackle, that is a positive play for the 49ers defense, but he's going to be graded negatively for that. His stats in 2016, he played in all 16 games, which is huge. He had 1 sack, which was great, 33 tackles, 19 solo tackles on that, which isn't bad, but it's not really good either. So that's kind of where he's at. And he had one of the worst run stop percentages in the NFL last year. Again, the idea there is he's not a stunting defensive lineman. He's not doing swim moves. He's not doing rip moves or spin moves. He is just an anchor on that defense. He did have his career high in snaps last year for the 49ers. He took 622 defensive snaps and was on special teams for 74 of those. Most of those were on field goal block and things like that. Now, contract year, he signed a 4-year, $16 million deal, and he has 3 years left on his deal. His cap hit this year is 3.8. The next 2 years after that is 4.4. I don't know if he will play out his entire contract with us. We're kind of going to have to see what that looks like. If DJ Jones steps up his game, he could become the starter. But with somebody as durable as a nose tackle that can play 16 games, that's pretty rare. And so I think the starting job is going to continue to be his, but I think his snaps will go from about 622 down to closer to 500 in this next year. And again, injury history, he had a lower leg injury in 2016, but that's about it. Now let's talk about DJ Jones. DJ Jones is a fun player to watch on film. He definitely jumps off the tape, much more so than Earl Mitchell. 6 foot, 321 pounds. He's only 23 years old. He was a rookie last year. We got him in the 6th round out of Ole Miss last year, and he is an absolute lock. This kid is weird because he's very heavy-bottomed. He's built like a bowling pin. So the funny thing about that is he's not necessarily a power-type guy. The strengths to his game is he is agile. He loves kind of standing up and doing that like cat-like juking move to get space, and he is a guy that does play a little bit more on passing downs. He can get in there a little bit more. Very high motor, very, very tough. I wish that he played more behind his pads instead of under. That's a very common critique because he wants to stand up and look and figure it out. And it's like, dude, you're not a linebacker, so you got to go through that guy, not around him. But it works for him. His lateral quickness isn't as bad as it should be for a guy that's 300 pounds and only 6 foot tall. But there were quite a few times whenever he was in the game last year, and you see this on film, after he played 2 or 3 snaps, his hands are on his hips, and he's huffing and puffing and just seems out of it. So hopefully his condition and his body will develop more in his second year. And, he's not an athlete, but you got to be in shape. You got to keep your size up, which is really hard to do at only 6 foot, and then you got to stay in shape, which, I mean, if you watched NFL Network this week, Joe Thomas, the retired tackle, he said, man, the number one thing about looking forward to retirement is I could lose weight. He's lost 50 pounds since he retired just 5 months ago. And so he talked about how you had to eat until you're ready to throw up every single meal to keep that weight, because he's an athletic guy. And so it is tough keeping that strength and that size and speed all at the same time. But I'm hoping he can step out of just a rotational player status and can become a contributing member. He got to play in 9 games last year as a rookie. And again, his run grade percentage is 53. That's kind of where he's at. So he's not much behind Mitchell, and he could take some snaps. I hope he does. He took 147 snaps last year, 43 additional snaps on special teams. But we need to get that up. His contract, man, it's awesome. Rookie deals, they are what make a team be able to sign great players, and we got a lot of young players. His cap hits $500,000 this year, $600,000 next year. 2020 goes up to $700,000. So he's a guy that you're not going to cut. Even if his play doesn't improve, you're keeping that guy just because he's so cheap. Now what I want to focus on, and this is the closest camp battle that I can get to. And it comes down to Sheldon Day, who I think is going to win the spot, and Julian Taylor, the defensive end that we talked about the rookie out of Temple. So Sheldon Day, real quick, let's just talk a little bit about him. He is 6'1", 294 pounds, only 24 years old. Now, here's kind of the thing. He came out of Notre Dame, and we didn't even draft him. That's the thing. Jacksonville drafted him with a fourth-round pick in 2016. So he's already had a couple years, and we were able to get him last year, and he came in and played awesome. But the problem is this. Julian Taylor is a seventh-round pick this year. So one of these guys is not going to make it. I don't think there's any way that we keep both Sheldon Day and Julian, because it just doesn't fit, and we already have a lot of strength at both of those positions. So they're kind of fighting out, even though they play different spots, because Sheldon Day can play the nose and the three technique, whereas Julian Taylor's probably just going to be the three technique guy. The problem is Sheldon Day does not qualify for the practice squad. Okay, so I want to just kind of pump the brakes real quick and explain what the practice squad is, because this is gigantic. So you have 10 players that you're allowed to have on the practice squad. It used to be 7, and then in 2014 they bumped it up to 10. But it's not for anybody. So you can't just put anybody on the practice squad. They cannot have accrued one NFL season. Now, what the hell does that mean? An accrued season by NFL standards, and this has to do with practice squad, league minimum pays, veteran minimum pays, even getting into the benefits package for retirement, is accrued seasons. And what that means is you have to have 6 games in this given year on the active roster. So you have to make the 53-man roster. If you do that for 6 different times within the season, then that counts as a full season or accrued season. So usually you can only be on there twice, so basically your rookie year and then your sophomore year. And if you're an undrafted free agent, that usually carries over as well. There are exemptions, though. Somebody like Shane Scove is the guy that we had on there 3 times, if you remember him, the linebacker out of Wisconsin. And so if you've been on the practice squad twice, they can file for an exemption to have you on their 3rd time if every single week the team that you are on had 53 active players the entire time, which almost every single team does. They're going to bring somebody up, even if it's a third or emergency quarterback, something like that. And they only make $7,200 a week. That's the minimum they can make if you are on the practice squad. And you can say, man, that's actually a lot of money. Well, you are moving around if you're on the practice squad. Usually don't stay there the whole year, and nothing is guaranteed. So even if you sign, like you see all these undrafted free agents signing these 4-year deals or 2-year deals or whatever, those deals are null and void as soon as they're on the practice squad. So what'll happen is when it's cut down time after the 3rd preseason game, what they'll do is they'll say, all right, everybody is waived, all these guys. Well, your contract is gone unless somebody else picks you up, which usually doesn't happen because everybody wants to keep their own guys that they've had in camp. And then people start to fill out their practice squad roster, and that's whenever you start on this $7,200 a week minimum. And that's a weekly thing. So if you get cut off the practice squad or injured, that money is gone. Like, you don't get any extra. So back to Sheldon Day. Hopefully that helps you understand the practice squad and why I think it'd be Julian Taylor on there, because he qualifies. So technically we could keep both Sheldon Day on our active roster, and we could waive Julian Taylor, hope he goes through waivers, no team picks him up, and then we can stash him on the practice squad. 7th-round picks are kind of 50-50s anyway. They all don't make the roster. So Sheldon Day was a 4th-round pick by the Jags out of Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish. Back in 2016, we claimed him off of waivers in November. So right around Thanksgiving last year, the Jaguars kind of said, we don't need him. If you remember, they acquired Marcel Darius, and so we were like, awesome, we'll take him. The strengths to his game, man, he is a fun guy. He doesn't have power. I know I said strengths, and then I say he doesn't have power. Very quick hands, quick feet, and super high motor. It seems like if there is a common theme with this defense, motor and kind of effort guys, this is where they belong. He's very versatile and can play nose, 3, 5 technique with ease. He kind of does a little bit of everything. But again, very slow speed-wise. You'll see him trying to run down plays, and it's just like, man, dude, you're not going to get there. It's just not going to happen. He's kind of a back-end rotational guy for us whenever he came in, but he was only with us for 6 games. That's whenever he came over, and, man, he got 196 defensive snaps. We had a lot of injuries, and he was able to fill in a lot of different spots. And his grades are awesome. PFF overall grade has him at a 75 grade. Again, the other guys are at 53 and 55. But again, this shows you he plays a little bit of a different position, and he's going to flash a little bit more because he will make his own play from time to time with his quickness. But he's not going to be that anchoring nose tackle. You can put him in there if you need to in a pinch, but that's not what he's designed to do. He had 12 tackles and 1 sack in 6 games, and man, he's just a football player. He's not one of those guys that if you lined him up next to all the other defensive linemen, you'd be like, whatever. But then you turn the film on, and he shines. He jumps off. So the deal that we got him, because we picked up the Jags deal whenever they waived him, he had 2 years left, and so he's pretty cheap. $630,000 against the cap this year, and next year is pretty cheap as well, only $700,000. So we are getting a lot of these bargain players with a chip on their shoulder that are scrapping just to make this roster. And one of the things to take away from the press conference just today between Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, they kept saying, man, we have depth now. Last year, we were just trying to figure out how to get people on the field, like who's going to play this position. And now, we have people on our 90-man roster, and we know that when we cut them, we're not going to get them back. We know that there are people that once we cut them, they are going to other teams because we have a much deeper, talented roster. And so that's my maybe guy. There's 2 undrafted free agents that have a shot, but it's not a very big shot. These are kind of lottery ticket players. You'd love to root for them, but it just doesn't make sense. Blaine Woodson, he's 6'2", 280, out of Delaware. 6'2", 280. Niall Scott is 6'3", 280, out of Frostburg State. Man, Frostburg State, how awesome is that? It's so weird. We have 5 defensive linemen that weigh 280 pounds. That just doesn't make sense. I know I talked about it with the defensive end episodes, but every time I see that number, I'm just like, man, if you want to make the 49ers, go get yourself to 280, and I think you got a shot. Anyway, so the 3 guys that I have making the roster, Earl Mitchell and DJ Jones, are locks, and Sheldon Day is my 51 to 49% last guy on the defensive roster. Him and Julian will just have to wait and see what happens. If you haven't already, go give our Statman Clayton a follow. He is killing it and just putting up awesome information. You can follow him on Twitter at CADIEUX Clayton. So, Cadeau, Clayton, stay strong, faithful, and football season is here. Oh, thank God.